Continuing our series of Metal Gear Solid reviews, today we have Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, which was released for the PlayStation 2 in the year 2001. Now, in order to talk about this game, I'm going to have to reveal a very minor spoiler. I don't even really consider it a spoiler because it happens within the first couple of hours of gameplay, and it's pretty much common knowledge at this point, but be warned, there are minor spoilers ahead. This game takes place a couple years after the events of Metal Gear Solid 1, and once again, you're placed in control of Solid Snake, who's back in action in a mission on an oil tanker. The game has a few tricks up its sleeve, however. Unfortunately, Snake fails his mission on the tanker, and at that point the action cuts ahead a few more years. A new group of terrorists have once again taken over an American facility, only this time they're holding the President of the United States hostage. It's at this point that we're introduced to the actual protagonist of Metal Gear Solid 2. His name is Raiden. He's a new agent that's sent in to rescue the hostages and stop the terrorists. Now, a lot of people were really upset about Raiden when this game first came out. They went in expecting to play another game as Solid Snake, and instead they got this new protagonist completely out of nowhere. I can totally understand why people were upset about this when the game first came out, but I went in knowing that I would not be playing as Solid Snake, and personally, I really like Raiden. I think he's a pretty cool character, and I really like the idea of seeing this story from the eyes of a new person with a completely different personality than Solid Snake. Much like the last game, overall the characters here are pretty great. There are a few that didn't really work for me, and I'll talk about them in the bad section, but for the most part I enjoyed the new characters, and I really loved seeing the old characters from Metal Gear Solid 1 back again. And once again, some of the boss fights are pretty cool here. A particular favorite of mine is Fat Man. He's a really interesting character, and he has a very fun boss fight. The graphics of this game really surprised me. This was made back in 2001, and these graphics still hold up surprisingly well. There have also been some tweaks to the already great gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 1. These improvements make it even better. For starters, they've added a first-person aiming mode, which makes the action sequences a lot more enjoyable. They've also added a tranquilizer gun, which makes it easier to go through the game without killing anybody. If you want to, you can go through the entire game hitting every enemy with the tranquilizer gun. You can even hit the bosses with it. This motivated me a lot more to take the stealthy approach this time around. Now let's get into my favorite element of Metal Gear Solid 2, the story. I cannot stress enough how absolutely incredible the writing of this game is. This is a game that has a lot of guts. It tackles some very deep and dark themes. I also have to give the game props for not shying away from some extremely surreal moments. These moments, especially the ending, left a lot of unanswered questions, and I really appreciate that in a video game. Sometimes it's nice to have a game that makes you think, that makes you want to go back and replay it to figure some things out. I really enjoyed this aspect of Metal Gear Solid 2. Unfortunately though, the story is not entirely perfect. So once again, there is another pretty forced romance shoved into this gritty action game. I have to admit though that I feel like this romance was handled better than the one in the first game, and they do some interesting things with it in the third act, but it just felt kind of out of place to me. They even name the two characters that are in love Jack and Rose, which is pretty on the nose when it comes to references. Going back to the boss characters, there's one boss in this game that was pretty underwhelming. This is really disappointing, because this is a character that I was really interested in, but you don't even really fight them during the boss fight. There's also a kind of annoying section towards the beginning of this game that involved running around the whole map again like in Metal Gear Solid 1. Again, this just felt like unnecessary padding to me. Although it does lead up to the Fat Man boss fight, so it's not entirely bad. All in all, there's a lot to love about Metal Gear Solid 2. I think this game is definitely worth playing, especially if you liked the first one. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.